You're watching Bhutan This Week, our weekly news magazine program with me, Tandon Finso. Our top stories this week: His Majesty the King granted more than 20,000 acres of land as Kidu in Pemagasel. In Samruzonkar, His Majesty the King grants more than 15,000 acres of land as Kidu to the people. And His Holiness the Jekembo appoints Lube Dagosering as Tsempe of the Jung Drasam. His Majesty the King granted more than 20,000 acres of land as Kidu to over 9,000 beneficiaries from the 11 gyoks of Pemagasel. His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Gyaltsen also hosted a toka to the gathering of more than 5,000 people.
The Kidu program this morning started with offering of Kusuthogi Mende by the Rabde, the Zonkak and the people of Pemagasel to His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Gyaltsen. His Majesty the King then granted more than 20,960 acres of land as Kidu to 9,339 beneficiaries from the 11 gyoks of Pemagasel. His Majesty also granted exemptions to the thumb holders who were required to pay for excess land, and those who had already paid were granted refund. People were overwhelmed to meet His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Gyaltsen and shared words of happiness with BBS.
I am very delighted on behalf of the people, as many people were not in a position to pay for the excess land. I can now say that everyone is happy. I was worried about how much land I would be able to give to my children. I was in total distress until today. I am now very happy and privileged to get the Kidu for excess land.
Pemagasel is the 12th Zonkak to receive land Kidu. Kidu is a nationwide exercise to resolve all accumulated land issues once and for all. Following the program, people offered Sokchang to His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Gyaltsen. His Majesty granted an audience and hosted a toka to more than 5,000 people gathered. His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Gyaltsen also interacted with the people and shared portraits of His Majesty the King and His Majesty the Fourth to Gyalpo. Compiled for Tinadoji and Dembatsering, Digichorindoji, BBS News.
In Samruzonkar, His Majesty the King granted more than 15,000 acres of land as Kidu to over 9,000 beneficiaries from the 11 gyoks.
His Majesty the King granted 15,328 acres of land as Kidu to 9,758 beneficiaries in Samruzonkar. His Majesty also granted exemptions to thumb holders who are required to pay for excess land, and those who had already paid were granted refund. With Samruzonkar, land Kidu to resolve accumulated land issues across the country has been granted in 13 Zonkaks. A total of 123,071 acres of land have been granted in 133 gyoks to more than 100,000 beneficiaries in Lhunsi, Bumtang, Mongar, Wangdifodrang, Ha, Dagana, Punakha, Tongsa, Tashigang, Tashiyangtse, Shemgang, and Pemagasel since 2010. Beneficiaries were also granted exemption of excess cost amounting to over 2.1 billion nutram in the 13 Zonkaks. His Majesty the King granted toka to thousands of people gathered to meet His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Gyaltsen. His Majesty spoke on the crucial role that land plays in improving the lives of the people as well as the national economy in contributing towards achieving the national goal of food self-sufficiency.
Chigi nankyunara, lo changa kechigi nankyunara, alusu bomte kyo gopshe chimegale, alugi kablu sa melambal. The anzum ki sage yusa. Dari nabaye chelu sa chitu, mebachin, malambachin, tepke, the namchigi se che alugi kablu toro kyo gopshe chimda malambal yung. Tingale sa ekar che decimal kaluki egale sachu bego medembal. Yan Chuji Bochin, the Lando Chini Ligi Mahobachin, the Rangi Jakera Metion. The Sanam Letendi Vesagobachin, Sub Borgeto mean Thomas Sedra Tamisunsa. So Anzum Gitagil 데 아니 벤디기 ngachi saikidu di darigi di lerim dangba vecha janal lerim dangba di juduchi lerim ibadi gutsuni den lerim sumba gi kocha hyebegale de tingale chegi alu pusugi kablu de khora rango randu gi migil den rupsupchi kadebe zosuga ase de disem ka jak de siju sap chamnani sa de darigi ngachi saikidu gi lerim dangba di kalu hechile.
His Majesty reassured the people that this would not be the final land kidu granted to the people, and those whose land issues have not yet been resolved due to various reasons would also be taken care of. People also offered Kusutugi Mendel and Tsokchang to His Majesty. His Majesty the King also granted audiences to the Songkhap officials and local government representatives, as well as the armed force personnel, and granted kidu to care for Gevitoses and elderly citizens. Later, His Majesty visited the dairy farm belonging to Bimba Dukharki, one of the recipients of the National Order of Merit on the National Day celebrations this year. En route to Samdazonka yesterday, His Majesty the King visited Kinadang village. People living in far-flung areas of Pemagasal have been resettled under His Majesty's People's Project at Kinadang. The villagers gathered at the community lhaga to offer tsokcha to their Majesties were granted toka. Compiled for Demba Tsiring and Kilawangchuk in Samdazonka, Digichorindoji, BBS News.
His Holiness the J. Kempo appointed Lebe Dago Tsiring as the Tsempe of the Jungdrasang. His Holiness conferred Tashikada to the new Tsempe at the Punadewe Tsempe Fodrang. 40-year-old Lebe Dago Tsiring is from Ha and joined the monastic body at an early age of 13. He finished his monastic studies from the Punadewe Tsempe Fodrang in 1997 and studied at the Dodeda Shedra until 1998, following which he served as a lecturer in the same Shedra. His Royal Highness Prince Jigel Ugen Wangchuk, the President of the Bhutan Olympic Committee, inaugurated a newly built multi-sports hall in Tashigang. It was built at a cost of 24 million Nultrum.
The hall is expected to productively engage and encourage youth participation in sporting activities. This is the first multi-purpose hall in the country. Games like basketball, volleyball, badminton, table tennis and taekwondo can be played inside the hall. A survey conducted earlier in 2010 in Tashigang revealed that almost 75% of the people enjoyed playing these games.
We realized that most of the sports activities, events, infrastructure was all concentrated in Thimphu and its surrounding regions. So one of the objectives under the strategic roadmap for the development of sports in Bhutan is to take sports outside Thimphu. So of course this is one of the first initiatives taken, and hopefully under the 5-year plan we intend to build 5 more such multi-sport halls in Samdzongkha, in Bumtang, Phinsoling, Punakha and Paro.
The hall will also be used for other recreational and community events. It was built with contributions from the Olympic Council of Asia.
We need to balance sustainable management, where you'll earn some revenue also, so that the infrastructure will be able to maintain itself by itself, and we need to also balance that against access to the infrastructure. So the two major concerns for us will always be sustainable management and optimal utilization. So what we are trying to do is work on some guidelines and modalities for balancing the two. So this will come in I think within the next 2 weeks we should have the guidelines ready, and then Tashigang Sports Association should be able to implement that.
The Bhutan Olympic Committee has plans to lay 5 artificial turfs in Kaunglung, Gyalpushing, Bumtang, Phinsoling and Samduzongkha in the next few years. Compiled for Cheche, Digichorindoji, BBS News.
Coinciding with the birth anniversary of Her Majesty the Queen Mother Tseringpem Wangchuk, Bhutan Youth Development Fund launched their website. www.bhutanyouth.org was launched by Her Royal Highness Princess Chimiyangzum Wangchuk, who is the Vice President of Bhutan Youth Development Fund. Her Majesty the Queen Mother is the founder and the president of Bhutan Youth Development Fund. It was established in 1999 with the vision to ensure better life for youths. Prime Minister Singh Tobgay officially launched the Geo Connectivity Road blacktopping works in Tashigang. The Riju Barsam Road is the first blacktopping project in the east and will benefit more than 400 households.
The blacktopping works began for the 20.5-kilometer Barsam Riju Georg Center Road in Tashigang. This marks the beginning of Geo Connectivity Road blacktopping works across the country. The blacktopping of the Riju Barsam Geo Connectivity Road is expected to cost 36 million nutram. The road, constructed about 40 years ago, Lenchin Swing Topke said, should last for another 40 years after the blacktopping. The Prime Minister also emphasized on the quality of works and said that the Georg administration should monitor the works.
lamgi choda di kamo so chen chemiselu in seshuni choda so dalu lamse shimle chi leni mela lamchina ta shimle chegi chi leni me lam tare la bewi ga china tami ga dachi sane jungi thumi lungagi te labdo zumbe chemis sugiya ta ani lamdi nacharagi i se khabalu japchur bogo ba se kadichi be ngenle da yojurgi la bemi thomachin 뒤틀레라 책이 니주 마치루 깨고 세쇼니 데 람디 레지메 마세와친 뒤틀레 책이라 데 람세미슬랍 당시 베밀랍 얀 나첼룰랍고 세쇼니 나테세 사우슌레벤 데 오토토베 딩아 쪼카차발룰라 하짱 세쇼니
Department of Road has now over the years developed good capacity. There are good engineers, there are good site engineers and field offices manned with very competent engineers. So now the management will be all done by Department of Road through their field divisions, and we have also taken in additional engineers for supervisor. So now we have set standards. We have standards what kind of blacktopping standards we'll use, what kind of drains, because drain is very important. So all these standards we have agreed on, and we have drawn up a proper management plan and also supervision plans. So we are hopeful that we will be able to achieve a greater degree of quality.
Of the 205 georgs, 96 georgs have blacktopped roads, and the government will carry out blacktopping for 1,700 kilometers of georg center roads in 105 georgs within the 11th five-year plan. And the project is financed by the Government of India at a cost of over 2.6 billion nutram. Kampal Fopemanamge, Dikichorandaji, BBS News.
The Bhutan Council for School Examinations and Assessment has confirmed that English Paper 2 for Class 12 was leaked. An investigation into this was carried out in Thimphu, Paro, Bumthang, Samdulzongkhar and Chuka.
The paper was leaked mostly through mobile phones from students to students. Our investigation has pointed out to a person as the main source of the leakage, and I would like to say that the ultimate source was not a school in particular, not a teacher, not a test developer, and it was neither staff from the Bhutan Council for School Examination and Assessment. It was another person whose identity I'm not ready to disclose because further investigation may have to be carried out. Initially, the spread, I think, at least the investigation report reveals that the spread initially started from Paro area, students of in Paro area.
Since the investigation has confirmed that there was a paper leakage, will there be re-examination for the students?
Re-examination, to us, re-examination may be the best viable solution. But it is a very difficult decision. We alone cannot make this decision.
Several acres of land near the Paro airport fall under no construction zone for aviation safety reasons. Some of them, very close to the airport, even had their houses torn down. 3 families whose homes were demolished around 11 years ago are still without proper homes.
67-year-old Bida is one of the many landowners whose land falls under the no construction zone. But even more unfortunately, her land is very close to the airport. Bida says her house, along with 5 other houses, were demolished and her apple and pear trees cut down after they were said to be hindering the aircraft safety. Today she lives in the small cottage and grows vegetables for a living. Bida has been appealing to surrender her land to the government and in return be given a substitute land where she can construct a proper home.
I have approached the Georg office, the Zongkok office, airport offices, and even gone to Thimphu, but I have not been given a proper response. I've even spent all the money I got as compensation for my house and trees on making documents and on the traveling expenses.
With only a school-going son at home, Bida's only wish is to have a proper home. According to the Thokpa, the families were granted some land near the river to construct temporary homes. 2 of the families live in these cottages. However, Thokpa Finso says these are only temporary shelters and that they are not allowed to carry out any constructions.
They were given this land here to construct temporary shelters, but this is not a substitute land. They do not have any authority to construct houses here.
Meanwhile, the Department of Civil Aviation say they do not have the authority to provide substitute lands.
As for giving substitute, I think as is the norm, the appropriate authorities will have to deal. For example, in Gelifus, we acquired a lot of land, and we as a technical department, we had to only show that this is what we require. The rest was all done by the Zongkak and Between Land Commission.
Paro Zongkak administration is aware of the situation and is equally concerned.
What is important is to provide them with substitute lands, and for that we are constantly in talks with the owners. We ask them to identify the lands they would like as substitutes.
Sondatchen Chotsring says the owners have not come forward with any proposals as of now. But they however requested the authorities that the temporary lands be granted to them. The request, according to the Zongda, is not likely to be approved as the land they are in has been identified to create a public park. Kampalpa Ishi Gyalsen in Paro, Sonamchudan, BBS News.
Following the Zongkak Tsogdu's recommendation, works have resumed on the Shinkar Gyog Center Road. All the works are now in full swing. People of Wamling expressed dissatisfaction over the road being constructed as per the previous alignment, which does not pass through their village.
This is the controversial Shinkar Gyog Center Road in Shimgang. Its construction was halted following differences amongst the villagers of Wamling over the road alignment for over 4 months. Works, however, have resumed following a Zongkak Tsogdu recommendation. Although works for the much-awaited Gyog Center Road is being constructed with much issue, people of Wamling are accusing the local leaders of having misleading them by saying that the road would pass through Wamling, for which many were looking forward to. But as per the recent Zongkak Tsogdu's recommendation, the road is being constructed in accordance to the first alignment, which does not pass through Wamling.
The main problem came out when people of Upper and Lower Wamling wanted the road from their village, and this is why we had a serious problem. There was the first alignment, which did not have passed through Wamling. But again, there was another decision to have the road pass through Wamling. And today, the road is being constructed as per the first plan. That's why people are not happy right now. It was decided by the government, in close consultation with all villagers and the local leaders, to have the road constructed as per its initial alignment. I have no problems with the road not passing through our village. If it wasn't for the problem, the road would have already reached the Gyok center. A few local leaders informed us that it is possible to have the road from wherever we want it, which is why people are suffering now.
To this, Shinkargap Nidup said that the road was decided to be built through Wamling after carefully seeking approval from the villagers there. But the village, he says, had their own differences which led to the problem. People of Wamling are now saying if the road can be built passing through the village, to which the Department of Roads say would be more expensive as 8 kilometers of the total 17 have been constructed so far. Compiled for Pema Samdrup in Shimgang, Sonam Chudin, PBS News.
The Office of the Attorney General prosecutes the former local leaders of Shinkargyok in Jamgang for illegal census registration. The former Gups of Shinkargyok, Taula and Finso, and the former Mangmi Yuntin are charged for deceptive practice and forgery. It took 4 years to complete the investigation.
The main accused, 2 former Gups and a Mangmi, who served in between 1992 to 2010, are now being prosecuted in the Jamgang District Court. It was in 2010 when one of the households in Wamling village under Shinkargyok found 2 additional members in their census records. The household members said they came to know only when some differences surfaced while paying their life insurance fees. The matter was reported to the Dzongkhag authority.
핀수도지 세미데 인데 다음에 딸이 치르긴 인데 숨이 딸이 캐징을로 부지기노 더해지 아니보다 왜 아무리 니 교면 놓치나 가지고 먹었을 때 다음날에 내 레버난 아니 때 입자르면
이제 갑자기 때 똑딱세 안나 공개 암수디를 남는 거라 당아치 알면 또 다시다 레미미 또 님이지 또 맞들라 아니 아이들가 딱다 한 맛이라 하니가가 조마 템발았더니
체력이 알로 매니 시에 숨이수의 맛이
맛이다 숨이수의 맛이 같이 미싱하게 돼 간에 미싱하게 돼 아주 진으로 맞이 봐라 이걸 맞이.
The investigation revealed that the registration was done in deceptive manner without completing proper procedures of census registration. According to sources, the 2 additional census registration was said to have carried out by a 70-year-old man from Jamgang who was then working as a public servant. He had brought 2 boys from across the border from an orphanage school in early 90s and later had it registered. Currently, one is a public servant and the other one is doing business. Sources also told PBS that the illegal registration could have been done in early 90s. Compiled for Pema Samdu, Hishingitup, PBS News.
If numbers are any indication, then Phinsiling has become safer as compared to last year. As per the records with the Phinsiling police, common crimes like auto stripping, burglary and battery have reduced by almost 50%.
Auto stripping, which tops the list, has reduced by 50%. From 27 cases last year, this year only 13 cases were reported till date. Similarly, only 16 burglary cases were reported this year. Cases like battery and breach of trust have also decreased.
This decrease is attributed to intensive mass patrolling and other various crime preventive measures put in place by the police. They said for burglary and auto stripping, creating awareness among the residents and vehicle owners have been the most effective. Every year, police personnel visit door to door, creating awareness of such crimes. This year also, they are carrying out similar activity. Apart from sharing safety tips, they also distribute information pamphlets. Last year, over 4,000 such pamphlets were distributed. Police also said introduction of programs like community police and friends of police have also contributed to preventing several crimes. Compiled for Sonawandi in Finsoling, Sonam Chudin, BBS News.
Well, that's all we have for you this week. Thank you for joining us. Keep yourself warm. This is Tandin Finso. Saying goodbye.